Are you a Geometry Dash creator who cannot build anything better than this? Well, today I'll be showing you guys how to make a feature-worthy block in 2025. So let's see what I made and how I made it. Now, most of this video will be in post commentary, as then it'll be easier for me to explain what I'll be doing. But it will pop up in live commentary from time to time to explain some more complicated stuff. So in the beginning, you obviously have to come up with good structuring. And don't just try to use basic squares and stuff, because that's not really that interesting. Even though it did take a while for it to look good for me, what I tried to do was combining a lot of different shapes, but still make it feel pretty simple. Now, if you want to use some more complicated shapes, then that's completely fine. I don't have that much experience with that, however, but this is the structuring that I'm gonna use to decorate my structure. And next step is coloring. I prefer to use some pretty desaturated colors, as those tend to work pretty well with my style, but you can experiment a lot with trying to do more saturated stuff as well. And now I'll give you some live commentary tips on how to use colors well. Okay, so this is live commentary Wooful speaking, and I'll just be talking about some colors for this. So firstly, for this design that I want to do, I want to use two different colors, where I'll try to use the color of the background, which is normal. I want to try to use some plus 90 hue maybe, and then I also want to try to use some negative 90 hue. And if these kind of stick out a bit too much, you can try to, like, let's say make it be 0.70 in a way, if that's like nicer for you. So just try to experiment a lot with the colors, because even though it doesn't look that great right now, once you start to add more details to the design, it'll really stand out a lot more, and it'll eliminate one of the most common problems when it comes to designs in this game, being the design being monochromatic, which isn't really that great unless you want to stick to a certain theme. But if you don't want to stick to a certain theme and just do whatever you want, then try to include as many colors as you want to. Now we're on to the first details that add to my block designs, and the thing with these is that these are pretty much just mandatory for doing stuff how I make my block designs. And if you've seen any one of my videos, you obviously know that I'm addicted to using black inner outlines instead of my normal outlines in all my levels. And it's pretty easy to show how a simple pair of extra outlines improve your blocks. This is a really simple block that doesn't really look that good, but just adding some black inner outlines to them already make them look so much better. Although, everything doesn't go exactly smooth sailing, you know. Here I'm trying to add some more detail to the pillars, and while the glow looked pretty good, all of the other details I added didn't really look that good. One of the main principles for creating stuff is just to trust the process. Sure, stuff doesn't look that great in the beginning, but once you add more details or just tweak some stuff, it'll actually look really good, like with this design. Whenever I'm out of ideas for stuff to add to my designs, I just think of using these objects, and for example right here, I'm making a pretty interesting gradient with them. Now, when I add some details like these ones on the outlines, I don't keep them as this for too long, as at some point they are gonna look out of place, and so here I'm improving them pretty easily. Also, if you're struggling on filling like the middle of the base of your design, just try to use some default blocks with some blending colors to sort of ease them into the middle of the design. I used some of the 9 circles blocks from 1.9, and they actually made the design look way better, as long as I give them some good colors, that is. Also, if you're experienced in 3D modeling or painting, then you pretty much have a cheat code in GD creation, and to emphasize that, I'm gonna add some lighting to some of these outlines to make them stick out more. I then begin with the main base for the design, where I use most of the same types of objects, but I change some of their values like hue, layering, or opacity to make the layers stick out but also feel connected. And also for these 1.0 objects right here, I really like putting patterns in my design, as I just think they look pretty cool. Plus they fill up a lot of empty space. Now, once I'm finished with some larger details, I also want to add some pretty simple small details to kind of add some more uniqueness to the design, and also add some potential lore to them, like what are these special crystals doing in this design? Might be a little bit far-fetched, but who knows, I think it looks good. Now, using connector objects in your block designs are often seen as a sin in the Glow community. However, if you use it in unique ways instead of just covering your design with it, like for example what I'm doing here, then they can look pretty good and also match your design pretty well. Here, I used one of the tips I gave earlier, which is that I used some lighting for the pillar outlines, but gave them some hue and put them on the normal base, and it made the design look so much better. I also said earlier that I really like using these blocks, and I put that to the true potential by spamming them as much as possible in the center of this block. I don't know exactly how this works, but just adding some glow to it makes it feel like some of the best details in the entire design. It also acts as a sort of eye to the design, which can open all sorts of different fan theories about what they could be about. The only problem I had with this detail was that it was hard to make it look normal in the design, but then again, just trust the process. I also tend to use some black glow at the bottom of the design to act as a sort of shadow to contrast the lighting to the top of the structure. But remember, keep it at a pretty low opacity, and whatever you do, do not spam the glow, like what the fuck. Since the crystal looking details looked pretty cool, I decided to use them again, but with this shape instead. And unsurprisingly, it still looked very cool. I then added some pretty simple glow that I also did on the main structure, so nothing really that interesting here. I then added some more details to these outlines, and while they don't look as impressive as for example the pillars, they still look pretty cool in a more simpler way. And now I'll talk a little bit about proper lighting for your design. Okay, live commentary Woofle here. When you want to sort of highlight a certain part of your design, then you need to figure out which part you want to highlight, and you obviously can't highlight too much stuff. Let's say on layer 7, which there isn't anything in the center here, you can take some massive glow and try to place it right in the center here. Let's say make it be like 4 times scaled. I don't want it to be too bright, but yeah, something like this could work. So now you can see there's kind of like a light shining at this right here. And if I make it be T3, then it's even more obvious that there's something that's shining there. Now this kind of acts as like sort of RTX for the highlight. And in some cases it can look very well, and in some cases it can't look very well. Basically, it depends on what you want to highlight in the scene. So if you want to highlight something in the background, you don't really need to put this highlight on the block design. But if the background and everything else is pretty simple, then you can try to use this instead. So pretty much it's just some preference, you know, do whatever you want to do. I then added a few more details to the center, like these crystallized objects and these metallic blocks, before beginning with the spike design, which is a very crucial detail when it comes to making your block designs. For my normal spike design, I just combine a normal spike with some black inner outlines and some glow, and that's pretty much it. I do copy and paste it a lot though, and for this I'm also altering the hue to fit with the other layers of the main design. And if I feel like the design's too empty, I just add a really tiny black spike in the center, and I also add some glow in front of everything else. I also give the smaller spikes a group linked to a pulse trigger to shift its hue automatically, because I'm lazy. And the final thing that I add is a pretty simple 3D consisting of outlines and black inner outlines, a base that is sometimes blending but normally it's just a solid color, some glow that is warped to the side to fit the 3D, and some 2.0 objects with a black blending base, which makes it look pretty interesting. Now the main tip I have for making 3D is basically how you put them throughout your structures. What I do is that I make different segments of each different type of 3D that I'll use in my design, and I link them together and kind of combine them into the structure like Lego. I haven't seen anyone do that before, which is really surprising because it's such a nice tactic to use. And the final thing I'll add before finishing off the design is some low opacity black spikes on the top of the 3D. And yeah, that's the entire block design. So while it might look that I used my absolute all to try and make the best thing as possible, this wasn't necessarily too hard to make. There was only like a few things that were hard to execute. And most of the time was just adjusting different things like colors and details to try to make them look as nice as possible. And now we just gotta see if this like looks good with every color. So let's say if I want it to be the same shade, but let's say a more pinkish color, then it looks pretty cool. So unlike what Vit12 did in his block design video, I don't think I'll make like a less complicated and a more complicated version of this. This is just something that you can try to make. And don't just try to like just straight up copy exactly what I did. You can try to do it at the beginning, but later on as you evolve your craft, you can try to just experiment way more. Like, let's say you don't want to have it be as many different things, like maybe you want to add some different details or remove some details. This is just pretty much how I make my block designs. But if you're wondering, I will upload this level to my account, so you can then copy that level and kind of nitpick and point out all of the details that I used and how I made them work to make this look the way it does. Now, even though block design is pretty important, it isn't the only thing that makes up a good level or just good deco in general. So in the future, I kind of want to make a full tutorial series where I'll basically show you how to make a arguably feature-worthy level using the style that I and many other people use. But yeah, that was it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and I'll give a special thanks to all my members: Dastinity, GhostXan, Padre, Qafo, Malachad, RionFX, Skechygd, Rolling 2400, KirbyaxolotlGMD, Zosia, Lewko, Vernosis, RSD621, Cohen, Lamafaker, NEOnTixx, Ripluck, Felmix9, and Danielle Boudreaux. So, yeah. Bye-bye.